So apologies. I did see this a few days ago, but I've just been overwhelmed. So sorry. We're getting to it. I will only do minor spoilers, and I only have passive knowledge of the video games. I will note some differences, but I will keep it vague. So, what has happened? We went from a near perfect episode to one that I think, frankly, did drop in quality. It's still a great episode. I'm going to give this in somewhere in the 8 to 8.5 vicinity out of a 10 score. But there were some issues I had, and even though I personally don't mind what Neil is up to with his style, I can see where some people would get a little bit annoyed. The main story did progress quite significantly. I know some people were complaining that they're dragging out the story to match the video game. I did not feel that. I actually thought this episode breezed by. There is something that happens in the beginning that some people felt really was not necessary or that just kind of stretched things for no reason. And I want to be upfront, and this is relevant, that I am Hispanic. So for a while I thought, oh, are they switching to Latin America? And the answer is no, because I also have taught Chinese history and Asian history in a few colleges. And I was like, oh, they're in an Asian country, right? We're getting the perspective of the apocalypse from different places. I will just say that the place they picked, Indonesia, I don't think matches the real history of Indonesia, which has had a pretty horrific past with genocide in East Timor, a fascist dictatorship for decades. So it didn't ring correct how Indonesia would operate, but that's just me. That's a little bit of a nitpick. That I don't think was too bad, but then we did get into more substantive problems. Overall, there's really not much to complain about. I thought the performances were great. The look, it felt like a really authentic American city breaking down. I am on the East Coast, but I've only been to Boston a few times, but it definitely felt like, okay, this definitely feels real. And even though Ellie does look different from the games, I can buy that Bella Ramsey is an American girl, an American woman. I think the authenticity and verisimilitude were very powerful, and the production design was really enthralling. You just felt very immersed in this world, that this is a place that has really broken down. And the Dark Tower series with Stephen King is one of my favorite series, and that is also very apocalyptic. So all of this rang really true, and a lot of it was great, but then you had the drawbacks. So what was not right with this episode? Well, for many people, this may be a minor thing, but I think it's actually very important. The sound design was kind of weak. Not the music, the sound design. I just think the zombies, and I do realize these zombies come in different varieties, the zombies just had this noise that felt very monotonic. It just felt like they had one noise, it's the same noise, that's it. And maybe that's true to the video games. It just felt a little sloppy because whenever they're on screen, they're basically screaming or whatever, emitting sound, but basically it's at the same level. It's like there's no change, even though sometimes they move away from people, but they're still sounding the same. So that felt a little lazy and sloppy. Even the costumes with these zombies felt not cosplay, but they kind of stood out because the costumes otherwise were really great with Joel, Ellie, Tess, and again, the Indonesia section. I was like, they put in a lot of effort there, but with the zombies themselves, they kind of felt kind of weak. And I didn't have problems with the way people spoke in the episode, but I did feel with Ellie, for whatever reason, they're trying to make her a little too extra tough. So she's just cursing a lot. She's just saying fuck and shit a whole lot. And she's just, I think it just sounded weird to me. It just sounded a little off. I get it that in the situation, people would be like that. They would have weird jokes and just mix in everyday speech with a lot of cursing, but it just felt a little bit too much in places. So I do feel like Neil, frankly, is trying to be like Ryan Johnson. He's just trying to show off his style and in an excessive way too quickly. So you can definitely see a kind of legacy of The Last Jedi. And I know The Last Jedi is very divisive. I like The Last Jedi, but I can appreciate that people have issues with that. I feel that Neil is just trying to do way too much, way too quickly, and that kind of undermined the story. Again, it's not a bad story, it's not a bad episode, but I do feel like he went too far in some places. In other places, he just wasn't mindful of details, because they do a good job of building towards the conclusion, which is very powerful and very large. But I do feel it felt like a little too Hollywoodish. Like, would it really work in terms of physics? Like, would it really be that devastating? I don't know. I think they went a little overboard. I know this diverges from the game. That's fine. I have no major issues with that. I just felt this didn't need to be that massive an ending. You could have just gone for a more quiet ending. It could be big. I think that would have been more impactful because they pull the trigger on certain people, I'll just say, will not be continuing with the story. I'll just leave it there. And I thought the way they did it was very appropriate. Some people are complaining that Tess and Ellie are being a little bit too, whatever you want to call it, masculine, and Joel is not. I did not sense that at all. And again, I'm prejudiced because I am Hispanic. I'm also a big fan of The Mandalorian. And there, Pablo Pascal is not literally the Mandalorian, except in a few scenes. So that's a different actor being the Mandalorian. He only does the voice for most scenes. But here, I definitely felt Joel's conflict because he is massively tough. I mean, they're discussing in front of Ellie killing her. So this is not a soft guy. He has killed evil people. He has killed innocent people to survive. He's upfront about it, saying, it is what it is. If I think you're becoming a zombie, I'm going to kill you. That's all there is to it. But he's not happy about it. And you can kind of sense something in his core that it's definitely weighed upon him that he's made some bad choices. And even though you can't really fault him, he needed to survive, and the situation is just horrendous, you can definitely feel his guilt and trauma. But he is ready to pull out that gun and just kill without any hesitation. So I thought that was done very well. If people consider that emasculating, I'd say take another look. I think Joel made very clear he tries to respect people, but beyond a certain boundary, don't push him. And if you think Tess was barking a little bit too much, they, I think, did a good job explaining why that was so from her point of view. I'll just leave it there. So overall, really great stuff. I'm going to give it an 8.35. If you're not familiar with TLOU at all, I think they did a really good job with the first two episodes, really giving you what this world is, what the basic situation is, and in a relatively short time, telling you what you're going to get. And I think it's mostly great stuff. But I do sense this was a drop in quality, which is unfortunate. Still a great episode, but to go from basically perfection to just great is a decline. It's a small decline, but it is a decline.